Welcome to another episode of In the Nude. Today I want to talk about failure, repeating yourself, and getting mad at yourself. I think we all do this, right? Or maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the only person who continuously feels like I'm learning the same lesson and then being mad at myself for not having learned the lesson, right? So I have been continuously learning about being present and making space and allowing my feelings, allowing what is, right? And then I find myself grasping for control and wanting something to look different because in my head it's time and that there is better than the here and now. And then I re-embody, rethink through that wanting, desire, focus over there isn't going to bring the here any faster. In fact, it usually will keep a larger gap than if I'm just present where I am. And then if I'm present where I am, I actually have more joy, but then me relearning the lesson gets me mad at my past self for having not remembered the lesson I already learned, right? Okay. This last week, that was a cycle that I went through. It's not fun to go through that cycle. So I want to talk about going through the cycle and things that I do along the way in the cycle. And maybe in the mix of the things that I have found to be helpful, you will find things that will be helpful, or it will spur you to try things and find things that work for you. We all go through these mental ups and downs, or maybe that's just me again. I don't know. I go through these mental ups and downs. And in those mental ups and downs of whether it's any facet or facsimile of why that happens. But this last season, this last little time frame of a couple weeks, I kept having this feeling of defeat, this feeling of failure, this feeling of where are my results? Where is this end? Where is this there that I feel like I've just put in so much work, and yet I keep coming back to the place of the same. It feels the same. And then being frustrated at I feel the same or feel those same feelings when I have seen so many different results. I'm way more patient with my kids. I don't snap very frequently. I used to have an inner bully, an inner dialogue that was so hateful. The meanest things that you would never say to another person used to constantly be said in my head over and over and over at myself. That doesn't exist in my brain anymore. That's huge. And yet I skip over all of these things and I just focus on some minute thing that I feel like is tangibly what I think should be, or I want and I desire. And it's not like it's a bad thing that I want or desire them, but the fact that I so focus on what I don't have versus so much of what has changed and so much of what I do have. And so I'm sitting there being mad at myself for this focus of over there, but then still not being able to fight myself, get away from what I'm thinking about over there. And no matter how much I sit there and positively think and try to write up a list of things that I'm happy for and try to shift my focus, which none of that is bad. There is a gain to how you view something, how you interpret something, how you specifically decide, okay, where I'm sitting and viewing my world. That does make a difference. It does help things. But it only works if you are already, okay, imagine you had a really bad day and you're talking to your friend and your friend tries to give you the shift of how you were blessed that day. You want to smack them in the face a little bit, right? You want to just okay, yeah, whatever, and you walk away, right? But that's what you're doing to yourself. You're trying to manhandle yourself into switching directions, or that's what I do anyway. And what we need well before I can actually do that is for me to sit with myself in the uncomfortable of, it's fair. You have these things that you want for your kids. You have these things that you want for yourself. You have these things that you want adjusted and changed in a tangible, visible way, and they haven't been. It's 4 years in, and it hasn't changed. That's fair to be focused on that. It's fair that there's so much noise about the out there's and that it's so distracting. No wonder you're frustrated. No wonder you feel defeated. That's real. I can't talk to myself about adjusting my viewpoint. I can't change my perspective. I can't invest and be willing to receive things that might shift my mentality and thought process if I don't sit, or it's not going to last. It's just going to be shoving a barking dog into a closet. It might mute a little bit, but eventually that dog's going to break through, and it's not really kind to the dog, right? Okay, you're doing that to yourself, right? But a much quicker path is just to sit with yourself. Like that situation when you're pissed off at your friends, like, yeah, that is really annoying. That's all it takes. And like you go from like level 10 to frustration to like level 5 frustration in that one little sentence because somebody sat there and was like, yeah, validating your feelings, making you feel heard and seen and empathized with. But we can do that for ourselves. So if I sit with myself and I say that's reasonable and understanding, and I don't sit there and tap my foot. Like, you ever had your kid be like having a fit or somebody else and they're complaining once again and you're frustrated with their complaining? Maybe you don't have the space in that moment to be able to help that person regulate your feelings. So you probably shouldn't be helping them regulate your feelings, right? And sometimes that's true for yourself. Maybe you can't sit with yourself in that exact moment and maybe you need to escape. Maybe cleaning your kitchen or watching a TV show is what is helpful for you in that moment so that you can have less for you to be able to sit with yourself. Fair, totally fair. Space is good. But we can't, sitting there and having that energy of somebody tapping their foot being like, are you done yet? Are you done? That doesn't help you. That doesn't create the empathy. It makes you feel like you're taking up too much space. It makes you feel like you're a waste of space. You wouldn't do that to your best friend. But I find myself doing it to myself. And so there's these seasons. This past season was me having to repeat on a cycle. Okay, tapping your foot at yourself is not going to help anything. Why don't you go do something else? Then coming back and having the energy to be able to sit with myself and then find myself still frustrated with myself even when I was doing that. Be like, okay, I can't sit with you anymore. I've got to go for it now, right? It's trying to do what you can where you can. And none of it is easy. It feels like this cycle of a 2-year-old having tantrums where you're like, I thought we learned this lesson. If the journey was extremely easy, life and people wouldn't look how they do. This is hard work, but so is the life that you used to lead. That life was hard work too. It just was hard work at the back end. You're dealing with that hard work now of living on default. The default's easy, letting things just go, not paying attention. That's easy, but with that beginning easy, you get all of this hard. That goes back to the delayed gratification. Right now, you're doing all of this root work. And yeah, it's going to be frustrating, and yeah, it's going to be cyclical in the same way that when you teach somebody how to ride a bike or drive a car or paint, or there's a lot of failure for tiny things where you start to succeed. But we sit here and we don't give ourselves the space and grace for that. Example is my kids. The other night, my 2 oldest decided they're going to paint nails. And my oldest had to deal with me in parenting when she was really little, and I didn't have my ish together. I was recycling a lot of things from my childhood, and as a result, I lived out a model of perfectionism, a model of workaholism, and escape into that perfectionism, workaholism. And that sweet, amazing, fantastic, empathetic human, unfortunately, I modeled that behavior enough that there's some embodiment there. So when it came time to the nail painting and it didn't go perfectly, and her body didn't want to have to deal with the feeling like a failure, so they activated the protectors and anger came out. Anger at their sibling for not having done it perfect. Their sibling actually received it really well. They were hurt. They went away for a little while. They understood it wasn't about them. I had a conversation with my oldest, and they realized and they understood, but this cycle continued. Because the anger at not wanting to deal with the failure turned to anger at themselves and not wanting to deal with the failure that was there. We do that. I know what's going on in their brain because I've lived through that cycle. And I'm going to tell you and myself and the same thing I told them. There's no way to get to a place of that arrival you're wanting. painting the nails perfect like a stylist would, without being willing to do it ugly a lot of times. It's okay. We made a mess, we'll clean it up. We can paint the nails and they can look funky and we can wash them free and you could do it again. Over and over and over again, slowly but surely tweaking and seeing what doesn't work and what does work. The part that isn't fun about that is if we choose to be angry. And it's the default. We understand, like, it's what we experienced. It's reasonable that we get angry at ourselves for failing because that's what failure brought in our life. But we're stopping those patterns. And so we have to stop those patterns for ourselves, within ourselves. I have to be okay with the fact that I'm going to have to relearn the lesson the same way I had to relearn every other lesson in my life. I have to make space for my failure. I have to make space for feeling okay with not feeling okay with my failure. I have to be willing to make a mess of my nails. And instead of getting angry at my lack of perfection when I instantaneously start doing something, find joy in the silly frivolity of being able to be like a kid and learn a lesson again. When we can do that, even if it's just moments of time, it's like cracking on this magic. It's cracking open that there that you so desperately think's on the other side of the universe that you're having to like strive after and you're not there. You literally, when you do that, when you let yourself just be a mess and like enjoy the mess that you are, you crack open the there here. All of a sudden, in that moment, the magic, thriving, fantastic moment, you're enjoying and content in your process, in the mess. You're confident and frivolous and laughing, and it's beautiful. When you let yourself do that, it's beautiful. It's hard. You're worth that hard.